Have you ever felt like if you could just find the love of your life, you'd be happy? Or if you had more impact, felt more confident, lost those last 5 pounds, or even made 7 figures, you'd finally be happy? But then when you do get to that goal, it's satisfying for a little while, but soon it feels like you need to have something else to be happy. Why does that happen? In this episode, we discuss a little-known distortion pattern that can totally cap how much happiness, fulfillment, abundance, and self-worth you feel. It's what causes us to feel like we need something more or something else to make us feel complete. It's a real pain in the butt, and most people don't even know it's there. But man, it definitely shows up in our lives. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part. The group frequency calibration associated with this episode is where the frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. If you like this episode, please help us out by hitting the like button and leaving a comment below. It helps us get our content to more people like you. My name is Karen Cheong, and today in Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, we're discussing absolute scarcity.
So we're talking about absolute scarcity as opposed to scarcity.
Yeah.
Seemingly there's a difference.
Yeah.
Sounds even more desperate.
Yeah.
You're like, you've got scarcity and then you've got absolute scarcity. It sounds horrendous.
Yeah.
Do we really have to talk about this?
Well, I think you do if you want to know what it is, so you could stop having it.
Yeah, so explain. I'm sure you have a tremendous way of explaining the difference and why it's relevant for us to learn about this now, especially in this time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So scarcity to me is just feeling lack in some way, right? It's like I don't feel like I have something. And scarcity could be lack of having something or being something. That's how I would sort of describe scarcity, okay? Yeah. So absolute scarcity is different though, because as you said, it is more desperate, it is more dire, and it's more extreme. And it's because it's one of the foundational distortion patterns. So there are 6 foundational distortion patterns, and I'm not going to talk about what they all are now, but what a foundational distortion pattern is something that all humans carry. It doesn't matter what your race, what your class, where you were born, it doesn't matter. You have it running through you because you're having a human experience.
Oh, so it's part of the human condition?
Yeah, it's part of the human condition. And it's partially stemming from dropping through the veil of forgetting that you and I have talked about and believing that we are separate and disconnected from the oneness and that we are alone.
Oh, that does sound desperate.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the foundational distortion patterns are unlike other distortion patterns that we have. Like, for example, if you have low self-worth, you kind of know what that feels like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, oh, and that really sucks, right? Or if you have something where, for example, the distortion pattern of, fear of loss, you pretty much know totally what that feels like.
Yes.
But a foundational distortion pattern is sort of invisible to us. We don't really feel it in the same way, in the sense that, like, you know what I mean? You don't have the same emotional response to something like you would, say, for example, to the fear of loss. Like, you know what that feels like if you're afraid that something is going to happen to your partner, your children, your parents, whatever, or like to your business, and there's this visceral, like, unbelievable fear, and you don't know why.
Yeah.
You know what that feels like, but a foundational distortion pattern is more invisible because it runs through everything, and we don't even really see it.
Well, if you were born with it, because you're human and you're born into it, it is that traditional idea then that you're kind of in the forest, you can't see the trees because you're in the forest, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So absolute scarcity is what happens when we believe fundamentally that we're incomplete, okay? That we need to have an experience, we need to buy something, we need to be in a relationship, we need stuff in order to be complete.
So we feel like we're lacking all the time.
Yes. It doesn't matter. We're always in scarcity because we inherently are incomplete. Okay, that's what absolute scarcity is.
Oh, have you got the cue for that?
Well, I do, in the sense that you can release these distortion patterns in terms of these foundational distortion patterns are so deep in our experience as a human. You can release them in the sense that you can lessen how they feel to you, and you can get to the point where they don't affect you nearly in the same way. Now, what you're going to say?
I kind of feel this cue.
Okay.
Reverse. what? You can, these foundational distortion patterns, you can actually help us release.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though it's inherently human and we're born into them and we actually had nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
But we, really?
Yeah. Why? Okay, so the question is why? And am I like super duper special and I wave my little fairy wand and then things happen?
What have you got that nobody else has got?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's awareness. Okay. So I just got to back up for a second. Your frequency resonance or vibrational level dictates everything. Yeah. And I've said this many times before. So anybody who's watched any of our podcasts knows that I've said this. So what your vibrational level affects also has to do with what knowledge you have, meaning what access you have to certain levels of knowledge or certain information or awarenesses. Okay? And what's happening is that we are rising enough in our consciousness level that we are starting to be aware of things that we were not aware of before because we were too dense in vibration.
Got you.
So part of what's happening right now, and it's not just me, right? It's a whole bunch of different people. And as you guys all who are listening and are doing the work are rising, you too will have different awarenesses that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
One of the awarenesses is that these six foundational distortion patterns exist.
Right.
So awareness is like a really helpful thing. Because
Yeah.
if you're not even really freaking aware that it's like there, then how are you even going to be aware that you can release them?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So even the fact that we're aware of them is helpful.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So even the fact now that you all know that it's, you're like, oh, whoa, wait a minute, that is true. Right? I feel like if I chase this thing and I get that experience or I have this teaching or if I do this other thing, then finally I'll be complete. I don't know what exactly that means, but like then somehow I'll be enough or, you know, like something magical will happen.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is, once you know that the foundational distortion pattern is even there, it's like a huge first step.
Yeah.
And then you work to release it. And it's very many layered, right? I mean, it's not like I'm just saying it's like one thing that just get poof and then it's gone.
Yeah.
But once you start to release these distortion patterns, you can start to experience something different in your life. And because you're aware that it's there and you're aware that of the possibility of it not being there, once you release your distortion around it, you can start to live more into the possibility of it not being there.
Okay.
Right? Especially as your consciousness level starts to rise and because you're clearing your distortion patterns generally. So yes, it's not just me. I mean, it's all of us doing this work together, yeah, that are making this kind of thing more possible. Hi guys, I hope you're loving our conversation. Our discussions are designed to empower you to transform your life and the lives of the people around you. So please hit the subscribe button because it helps us to expand our reach and to empower more people. Okay, let's get back to it.
So I want to kind of backtrack a little bit
Please.
because that was a lot.
Yeah.
And it was good. I just was like, okay, wait. So you said that the awareness is key.
Yes.
And once you're aware of this foundational distortion pattern, then you can work on to release it and it's layered. So let's just focus on that.
Okay.
I'm a person watching this.
Yep.
Let's just say I agree. It's a foundational distortion pattern. But I'm maybe aware of it, maybe a little bit somewhere, but is it everywhere? And how do I recognize it? You know, if I'm a person and I want to sort this, I want to rise above this, I want to raise my frequency, how do I recognize that it's present in my everyday life? Like, where does it show up? How does it show up? What does it look like?
It shows up on all the different levels. So it can show up like on spiritual, like even in a spiritual way, you know, that like feeling, for example, that you need to do all these different practices in order to reach the divine.
Okay.
Like I'm not enough right now in myself to be able to have a really beautiful connection with the divine. However you define that, however you imagine that, however you want that to be.
Right.
For example.
Yeah.
Like I want a deeper connection, right? But I don't feel like I'm worthy of it. That's how it might show up. Or it's outside of me and I have to do all these things to try and chase it.
Right.
Right.
A little checklist.
A little checklist. I did, you know, I sat in the right way. I listened to this number of meditations. I did the right mantras.
I gave $100 to this person that was poor and now I've earned points.
Or whatever, right? You have all these things. Like, okay, that is an indication of absolute scarcity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like I am not enough as I am right now to be aware fully of my connection to the divine. Okay, that is an indication of that.
Okay.
It can also be something like anytime when you're like, man, if I only had more confidence, then I would be more successful, right? So even an emotional state, like if I only was like that, then I would be this, right? That is an indication of absolute scarcity. If I finally achieved a job where I had, you know, a 6-figure salary and this title, then I'd be happy. That's a more common example.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or if I had a partner who was X number of criteria, this height, this weight, this color hair, this job title, this whatever, then we would be gloriously happy and we would get married and whatever, right? Like the fairy tale. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like whenever you feel yourself saying, if only I had this, then I would be happy, fulfilled, successful, content, full, whole, complete, connected, that is an indication of absolute scarcity.
Okay, because I'm sitting here thinking, but sometimes those things do happen and they do feel content.
Yeah, they do.
Right.
Yeah. But they don't. My point is, as you release the distortion pattern, what happens is you start to clarify your awareness of yourself as infinite, indestructible consciousness.
Right.
The you as big as self. So when you start to feel that and you start to recognize what we've talked about before, which is the relationship with the one, that is what makes you full.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not saying you can't derive joy from the friendship, the partnership, the new car, the fantastic house, the fabulous whatever you want to experience.
Yep.
Of course you can. You're human. Have a wonderful, amazing experience. But that is not where your belief that you are enough, your connectedness, your worth, it doesn't come from those things.
Right. So even if you never had them, you'd still be happy and content.
Exactly.
If we just look at it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
You'd still be happy and content. And you get to have them. So why not?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So for us, like, does it cap us, this foundational distortion pattern? Like, is there a point at where we're clearing our distortions, like you said, and we're maybe doing it around finances, and we're maybe doing it around fear? Does that, if we don't deal with that foundational distortion pattern of absolute scarcity, does it cap where the frequency can go?
Yes, because it's never enough, right? And it really keeps you in the sense that you are limited. I know it sounds weird, right? It's like, I got to do this thing. It keeps you really in the 3D because you're like, I got to do this thing and achieve that goal. Or I got to get these people to agree with me. Or I got to get, it's like, you know what I mean? Like or I have to control more, or I have to acquire more, or I have to do all this stuff. And you feel that way. And that scarcity pattern starts to affect what you actually can create. Does that make? I know it sounds weird.
No, it sounds perfectly reasonable. It becomes like frequency work becomes another thing that they have to do. Rather than I'm feeling the benefits of this and I'm going to do it at my pace. And I understand now that why I'm doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And so, as you said, so for example, in your thing of financial abundance or scarcity, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I'm clearing all my stuff around financial abundance, right? So I start off in a place where I'm having trouble affording, paying my bills.
Yeah.
Let's say, okay. So you start to clear up your stuff, your distortions around financial scarcity.
Yeah.
So what happens is you find a better job. And now you can pay for your bills and you switch your service providers. So now you pay less, right? And a deal comes in where something comes in for free.
Yeah.
And then you do more of your distortion clearing. And now not only do you have a better job, but you also have this other opportunity that's come in where you consult from time to time and they pay you a lot. And so you not only can pay your bills really easily, but you actually have extra income and you really love what you do. And so that starts to change. And then you clear more of your distortion. And then you get to a point, let's just say, where you're actually having a really lovely life. Okay. Yeah. So you are paying your bills, you can go on holiday, you whatever, you can buy the things you want from Amazon or wherever you buy them. Not everything you want, but many things you want.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're suffering, but you're doing well.
Yeah.
And then there's this ceiling where you're like, it's really weird because I'm working at this level, you know what I mean? I have this stuff, but I kind of feel like there's something more, you know what I mean? I can't quite pass this barrier. I'm working harder than ever and I can't quite, you know what I mean? I can't quite save more or I can't get the thing that I want. That's because you're hitting this absolute scarcity barrier and you have to release that first to really start to be able to feel or be aware of your limitlessness in terms of your abundance. Make sense? It caps you in the human experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So because it keeps you in that sense of small, of I need to have this in order to be happy. I need to have this in order to be content. I have to do X, Y, and Z.
I have to maintain this to keep this happiness that I've just found.
Yes. So it kind of ties. But when you release absolute scarcity, and as you release it to greater and greater levels, what happens is it becomes, and I realize some people are going to want to slap me because it sounds a little bit irritating, but it's not that it becomes easy. You just don't have to work hard in the same way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it takes no effort, because it does in a different way, but it has to do with like your mindfulness in terms of like what patterns are you running, clearing them. Can you sit in neutrality? Can you be aware of your triggers? Like that kind of effort.
Yeah.
And yes, you have to do stuff at work to like change things, or maybe an opportunity comes in, you have to follow it.
Yeah.
It's not effort. Like, it's not like you don't work. It's just, it doesn't feel as hard.
Yeah.
Right? And things show up for you that you can follow that allow you to access more of this limitless abundance. You don't need the thing to make you happy, or feel like content. You yourself are like, this is amazing. Like, my life is becoming more and more amazing. Mm-hmm. And I get to play in the space of more wonder. And I get to be in this, I don't even know really what it means to be limitless, but like all this stuff's happening, like synchronicities and like things are falling in, and I get to follow them, and I didn't really ask for them, but opportunities show up. You're doing it because you're following, and it feels like you're in this flow of life, but you're not desperately trying to make yourself feel happy in the same way.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, because I remember the switch for me. I wasn't attaining the thing, whatever that was, the job, the being better at making a chocolate cake.
Yeah, whatever.
Top of my head, trying to think of things. So that publicly I could receive some accolade and then I'd feel better.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is a personal challenge for me, because this requires a level of effort that I didn't really want to put in. But I understand when I put that level of effort in, and I do this for me, the value has tripled.
Yeah.
So for me, that's kind of like what the difference is.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm no longer doing this for public recognition.
Yeah.
That would confirm some identity that I need to hold up.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing it because, can I?
Yeah.
And I'm okay if I can't.
Yeah.
When I'm in that good place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm okay if I can't.
Yeah.
It's all right, because I have this inherent understanding that each moment is just a moment that pure source, or the one, or whatever name we want to give it, has provided for me to grow again.
Yeah. That's right.
Right?
Yeah. And that your worth is not dependent on achieving the job, the cake, the whatever. You get to play in it because it's fun, in the sense of like, well, can I get the job?
Yeah.
Can I make that cake better?
Yes.
Can I do it? Like, can I?
Yeah.
But it's not imbued with like the heaviness of, if you fail to, that your worth is dependent on it.
Yes.
Right? Because when you release that pattern of absolute scarcity, I'm not saying you have to release all of it, by the way, people. Like, people are like, I have to like clear it out in order to have like abundance. I'm like, no, you don't. You just have to clear it out enough. You get to, it's funny, it's a higher level order of neutrality what happens. Okay, when you, because then it's not like, if you didn't get the job, that you screwed up and you failed and you need to do something else to prove that you're valuable and that you're worthy and to be happy.
Yes.
It's like, no, actually, that's when you clear out that distortion pattern, you're like, okay, I could have that job, and it might lead to these opportunities, but if it doesn't happen, it's okay, because something else will come along and I'll either grow in this job, or something else will happen, or a collaboration will come in from a different way. And it's not even like you're expecting any of those things to happen either. No. They just happen because that distortion pattern, which caps you, is not there to the same degree.
Yes.
That's my point. The thing with foundational distortion patterns is you don't have to clear it completely, just enough to change how you feel, so that when you are in life, you get to explore it in a whole different way. Like, how you feel internally changes. Yeah. And that to me is like a really big difference. A lot of people are like, well, I want my external reality to change. Yes, that will change. And to a certain degree, depending on who you are, what you're attached to, how much distortion you have. But really what matters is how you feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what I was trying to get at, but you always say it better than me, so it's all right.
I don't think so, but thank you.
I think for me, that's the difference. For me, it's that internal knowing that was never there before.
Yes.
Right? I guess, like for me, that's how I put it in a soundbite. It's an internal knowing that I never had before, because absolute scarcity like denies that.
Yes.
It doesn't allow you to have that internal knowing that it's all good. This is actually just all for me.
Yes.
To be in an experience that allows me to figure out, what is this humanness, and what is this connection that I have, with this indestructible consciousness?
Yes.
I'm always getting there. I think that's what the soundbite would be for me.
Yes.
Is that, okay, prior to that, there was this desperation that somehow outside I'd feel validated, and then I'd have this worth that was severely lacking. And then after that, working on the foundation, still working on that foundation.
Foundational distortion pattern, yeah.
Foundational distortion pattern. There's an element that gets bigger and grows bigger of knowing that it's okay to be me. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got it.
Yeah, exactly. And that you don't need to be filled by something that is like a physical thing outside of you, you know, to have worth, you know, whether it's someone else's love, whether it's, you know, the car, whether it's the whatever. It's like, actually, I'm good with me. And I think that it sounds like not that big of a deal, but if you think about how much people strive in order to feel like they're okay, like they're enough, that it's going to be okay, like that's a huge relief and a big shift.
Yeah.
And then you start to, as you rise, and as, you know, as you're saying, like if your resonance is higher, you just start to be like, well, then what's really possible?
Yeah.
But it's not like it means something if you don't achieve it. It's because it's fun and you can play at it, you know? And I think that's the difference. It's not like this serious, heavy thing that means something horrible or about you, about whether or not you can achieve that thing, you know? Which I think is like a huge relief.
Yeah, a weight off the shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then when you release it, what happens when you release absolute scarcity, the amount of abundance that comes in an unexpected way that is not just money, because everyone thinks of abundance as money only, but it could be of time, it could be in depth of a relationship, it could be in whatever you experience, how present you are, how much joy you get out of a moment. All that, like these are like, that's a short list. I mean, all that stuff becomes much more available to you because you're not running this pattern that is capping you or keeping you from experiencing it.
Yeah. Whoa. This is a beauty. So what are we going to do with the GFC? Or what are you going to do with the GFC? I'm just going to sit and, you know, be part of it. What are you going to do?
So absolute scarcity is a really deep pattern. And so what we're going to be doing in this GFC is starting to chip away at like the foundation of it. Does that make sense? So it's like a really deep pattern. There's lots of layers to it. So we're going to like pull out some of the stones of the foundation of absolute scarcity. So to give you more momentum, so full spectrum coherence mastery, we actually tackle all of the foundational distortion patterns. So if this is something that you're like, this is something I need to go deeper on, that would be something that you might want to look into. But for now, for this GFC, to start to shake the foundation of that distortion pattern so that you have a little bit more spaciousness and that you have more momentum.
Oh, nice.
So for those of you who would like to release some of the foundational stones of absolute scarcity, I would highly recommend listening to the group frequency calibration meditation associated with this episode. And if you've liked this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe. We're about to start the group frequency calibration, or GFC, where we actually do the frequency work and change is catalyzed. To get to the GFC, click on the square that'll appear on the right or the link in the description below. It's time to bring in a new experience, a new consciousness, and a new world. Let's rise together.